Greetings and welcome back to the Casual Wargamer. You join me on a slightly chilly, slightly rainy evening. I've got my hot chocolate, keep me warm. And tonight we're talking about yesterday's tournament, our local monthly tournament at GamesHub, where we play. 1,000 points and our first tournament using the Prior Nexus deck. My list is basically the same one that I won the tournament with last month. That fluke 3-0 streak, which in this event, spoiler alert, was a fluke. I made a slight change to it. So I played the Gladius task force. I took a single character, a captain with Power Fist and Plasma Pistol with the Honor Vehement, with a 5-man Assault Intercessor Squad in a Repulsor Executioner. I had one Intercessor Squad to sit on my home objective, make it sticky, cheap points, and 2 Heavy Intercessor Squads to sort of try and do the shooty and do the battle line missions. Actually, none of which came up for me. I had an Eradicator Squad in Strategic Reserve and an Inceptor in Deep Strike. Last time I took 2 Eradicator Squads. This time I took just the one and replaced the other with an Outrider Squad. I'm not a big fan of Outriders. I think they are naff under 10th edition. They're not very good. But I thought, let's give them a try, simply because I haven't played them for so long. I thought I could zoom them up the table, grab objectives or table quarters or whatever I need to do. Didn't really work. In hindsight, maybe I should have put them in Strategic Reserve, but it didn't seem particularly useful role for them in the list. And quite frankly, they ended up being a complete waste of space. They died far too easily to anything that even looked at them with a stiff breeze. So, the first match of the day. Now, bear in mind, speaking of matches, this was held on the England footy match of the Euro Championship. So we ended up with just 4 of us playing. It's low turnout. But hey-ho, it did mean that we got to play everybody who turned up for the event, which was great. My first opponent brought the new Sisters of Battle Codex to the table using the Bringers of Flame detachment. And our mission ended up being Tipping Point, Rapid Escalation, and Scorched Earth. I'm not a fan of that deployment. Although initially I was like, oh, we've got these new deployments. Actually, having to measure out and plot them is a lot more awkward. I know it's a minor thing in the scheme of things, but it just kind of felt a bit irritating to have to measure here, then measure out what this is, and then what that is. Wasn't a big fan. I don't think we even used Rapid Escalation, as I recall, and we certainly didn't burn any objectives. I've played one, was it Scorched Earth? No, it was Terraform, in a previous friendly game of Prior Nexus, and nobody bothered with the primary objective of burning or activating the special rule for objectives. So, for all intents and purposes, we were basically just playing this. My opponent's list was quite nasty. This is my first time playing Sisters since 9th. They are relatively squishy, I found. They died quite well to heavy bolter and bolt rifle fire. But they are quite heavy hitting themselves in the right thing. Those faith dice were really good. His force was led by Morven Val, with a load of Paragon Warsuits who absolutely smashed face. They were probably unit of the match for him, I would say. He had a couple penitent engines, one of which for some reason was sat on his home objective and didn't do it a lot. The other one ran up the side of the field and butchered my Outriders, as well as a couple other units. This was a really brutal game for me. Bear with me a sec. I'll grab the scores. The Astartes basically pushed me back. I couldn't make any headway. And in fact, this particular match, I did try it got to a point where I just went, sorry, let's try one of the secret missions. I can't remember the name of it. It's the one where you basically have to get a battle line unit into your opponent's deployment zone. Unfortunately, at that particular time, I had one battle line unit, and I kind of hoped that because of how I had placed everything and the objectives my opponent had, that he would leave them alone. But that wasn't the case. He specifically targeted them and spudded them and moved on. So that game ended up 78 to the Astartes, 15 to me, which is quite a disappointing score. It was nice to see the Astartes in play again. As I say, I found them, if you shoot the Battle Sisters or get them in combat, which I did on a couple of occasions, they did really, really well. But everything else was nails. Good game. Really enjoyed that one. Round 2, and I was against the Custodes and their shield host. In this particular one, we had Crucible of Battle, Smoke and Mirrors, and the primary was Burden of Trust. We did use Smoke and Mirrors. I took off a unit of Heavy Intercessors, and I forget what my opponent brought off. Might have been Guardians. And in this particular game, my opponent was zooming ahead on points. Anytime I managed to get onto the objective, he took me off of it and scored points for that overwhelming force. And it was quite a struggle. He was always about 8 or 9 points ahead of me throughout the entire game. Even though we were whittling each other down, he ended up with only like 2 units left on the table, and I only had like 3 or 4. His army was nails. It literally was like trying to smash through a brick wall. The only thing that gave me some points on the very last turn, I went second, end of turn 5, I seized victory 61 to 57, simply because I remembered that unit of Heavy Intercessors and brought them on with Eradicators on the back line and took off everything that was on his objective, which was only a group of Sisters of Silence. Round 4 I brought them on, and on round 5 they were on that objective and doing things, and it netted me netted me those few points that I needed to win, which was great. I had expected my opponent to bring some either a Land Raider or the what they call it, Contemptor Dreadnoughts, the one with the sword and shield. He's played them before in games against me, and I was surprised he didn't. He went very infantry heavy list. But ultimately, my one win of the event, which I will take, was a good game. It was a real, what do they say on 40k 40 minutes? A real slobber knocker, a barn burner. It was a really good match, very tough for both sides, really. I really thought that the Custodes were going to seize it, and I was really pleased to get a decent win at the end of it. The last game was against a massive Orc horde, the Warlord detachment. We got Hammer and Anvil, Fog of War, and Terraform. Again, like I said, with I've forgotten the name of it. Scorched Earth, we never bothered terraforming anything. It just wasn't worth the effort. Fog of War did play quite well for the first turn for both of us. Now, this Orc Horde was led by Ghazghkull Thraka with a bunch of Meganobs and Makari, loads of boys, some killer cans, and a battle wagon. Now, my opponent was my friend Gary. I very rarely beat him. Although he probably wouldn't say it himself, I think he's quite a competitive player. He builds some really good lists, some really strong tactics that he uses. He knows what he's doing, and this was a really fun game. But my force, although I was managing to gun down some stuff here and there, and I did take down Ghazghkull. I can't remember what did it. I think I got him down to like 1 wound through grenades, and then I just a load of heavy bolt, heavy bolt rifle shots. Eventually finished him off, which was awesome. But he's a beast. Ultimately, however, much like my game against the Astartes, the Orcs penned me into my own deployment zone. They controlled the mid-table very early on and then just surged forward and mullered me. This ended up as a brutal 86-20 win to the Orcs. It's good fun. I still find Orcs really difficult to deal with Space Marines. But, you know, it's nice to actually see a good list and face them and try and overcome that challenge. So at the end of the day, I came third out of 4. Astartes came first, followed by the Orcs, me, and then Custodes. Thoughts? Good games, obviously. Prime Nexus, not a fan. I think I'm going to do a video about this coming up this week. Really not a fan of it. I much preferred Leviathan. Otherwise, we didn't have some of the more competitive players this month. I still probably think the Astartes player would have won. He had a really strong list and really did well with it. And I think he would have taken out most of the strong arm players that we sometimes get. I'm not surprised my list didn't do very well. I expected to get more battle line missions, and it didn't happen. And the Repulsor was my only transport for the captain and his squad. I mean, he did really well. The Honor Vehement, coupled with the Assault Doctrine, he was nails when he got into some of the battle suits. He was nails when he got into Gazgul. I think the list. I think if for Prime Nexus and for next month's tournament, I'm really going to have to rethink lists. I'm really going to have to put a lot more thought into it. But that's cool. So the only other thing that was disappointment, as I've mentioned in previous vids, I tend to try and, using the Tabletop Battles app, I look at what my average losing score is, and I always try and at least equal, if not beat that. And I only managed to do that in one game. At the moment, it's my average losing score is 30 point something. And I always try and get that 30 points. But in the games against Astartes and the Orcs, it just wasn't doable. There was no way I was going to do it. So that's yesterday's tournament. It was a good laugh. We all had fun. Yeah, really got to see what I can come up with next time. I need to start getting higher scores if we're going to keep playing with the Prime Nexus in these events, which we obviously are. Anyway, thank you for watching, guys. I'll pop the list in the description down below. Let me know what you think. How you think Prime Nexus is playing for tournaments. How well is it? And what you think of the Orc and Astartes codices at this point. I will get to them in our Let's Talk video at some point. In the meantime, thank you. Cheers. And I will see you in the next vid. Until then, take care. Good gaming.